Hello and welcome to yet another interesting episode of Supply Chain Management Series with Chinedu. And today we'll be looking at a very important concept, the make versus buy analysis. This is important because several supply chains struggle with knowing what to make and what to buy. Make in this context is talking about what to handle in-house, and then buy refers to what to outsource. In subsequent episode, we're going to see what it means to outsource, on the criteria. But for this episode, what does the make or buy cost analysis, refer to? It's just a comparison of all the costs associated with making an item versus the cost of buying the item. Now, in making an item, you're looking at having this item in house, right? Then in buying it, it's more of partnership or outsourcing. Very important to note some key consideration as a vibrant and viable supply chain that you need to consider before you select a partner for this or even to consider which to go with it. Ask yourself this question: is this activity a core competence? Is this service something that it's core, right? Is this an engine room for you? Is this something you have the expertise at, right? That you have to consider. That question has to be asked. If it's a core competence, you do not want to outsource that. You do not want to buy that, right? You want to make your core competence something you perform in-house. So identifying your core competence is very key. Next is, what are the consequences of losing the related skills or knowledge, right? So by outsourcing this or by buying this product, again, you're saying no to owning that knowledge. You're saying no to understanding what it really requires to make that product, right? Or that service, as it were. So what would be lost eventually? What is the consequence of losing that skill? In the nearest future, does it mean would you still be operating because again of that skill gap, that knowledge gap? Very important question to ask. And lastly, what's the landed cost or the total cost of ownership? Very important to always consider the cost perspective, right? What will it cost me to own this product eventually, or will it cost me to actually buy this product? And buying is not just the one-time payment made now, right? It's putting every other factor together in the long run. In the next 10 years, what does this mean for you, right? Is it a subscription kind of buying? Is it a partnership kind of buying? Things that will be lost and cool. Let's see the next slide to understand better. We're looking at this is a comparison to notes, right? Very important criteria listed here. One is the cost, right? Of course, when you make it in house, the initial investment cost looks high, and it's always high because you need to have the right team, the right structure, everything mostly in house. But then the long term cost is always lower. So initially, your high investment cost will be there, but as against once you are buying or you're sourcing it, there's a lower upfront cost, of course, but then potentially over time it gets high. Control is guaranteed when you make in-house. So decision of whether you're making or you're buying, understand if you want control. Again, this is one thing to consider. You have the full control of your IP, your process, your quality once it's done in-house. But once you're buying it, you have limited control. You're highly dependent on your vendor or your partner or whoever that you're contracting or outsourcing the function to. Expertise as well is here. You must consider once it's in-house, you need to train your team to have the required capabilities to handle. So this in year of expertise, you must make sure you have the right team. Again, that's why the initial investment is always high because you want to get the right people on board first to make right. Again, it may not be that expensive eventually, but then training must be done. You must have the right team to make that function. As against once you're outsourcing or buying, you're leveraging external expertise already. You know that okay, there's someone out there who knows this thing better, and then that's it. You just outsource to the person. Right? Speed to market, it's usually slower once you're making it in-house, and that's just due to setup time. However, it's faster. There's faster implementation, of course, when you're outsourcing because this person you're outsourcing to is that function is a core competence for them, right? Meaning it's easier for them and it's faster to the market for them. Scalability as well. It's easier to scale with vendor support once you're buying or you're sourcing, as against once you're making it in-house because significant investment is required to scale. So these are the things you have to ask yourself before you make that decision of, okay, should we or should we not? And that's where it's a strategic decision and it's also, of course, a tactical one, as we'll see on the next slide. Then also to note very clearly is the risk factor. There is risk factor on both sides. Whether you're making it in-house or you're outsourcing it, there's risk. So if you make it in-house, there's operational and financial risk. If you outsource it, of course, there's a vendor reliability risk or and the dependency risk, right? Because you're dependent rather on a particular vendor. So if that person says no to you today, you now have to start looking for another. Again, that time to get another might affect your business. So what do you do eventually? This, like I said, is both strategic and tactical. It's strategic because again, it must align with the overall business goal, right? In terms of how the business is positioned. But it's tactical because as you start on this journey, things might change. Okay, the cost might change, there might be fluctuation here and there. So you must know that okay, you must be very sure you are prepared for this. And that's why it is both strategic and tactical. What do I recommend? Mostly it's always make a decision based on, of course, look at the cost effectiveness, not just the buying, but the total cost of owning that product. Very important. Not just the one-time learning cost, right? They also look at the strategic alignment and also the operational feasibility. But beyond that, I would always say for most viable companies, for instance, like Toyota, once it comes to their engine block and code, they make that in house. But for the wiring and the electricals, that's mostly outsourced, right? And again, that makes the food brand what it is and that we like today. So in this same context, right, a hybrid decision sometimes works best, where you focus on your core competence and then you outsource the core competence to another, right? That is key at that. And when you combine both together, you see that you have a fantastic product offering. Trust this helps, and I trust you enjoyed today's session. Please feel free to like, comment, and drop those questions. Let's make it more engaging and watch out for more other series and episodes. Thank you, and do take care. Bye.